We love college football. We love a good underdog story and a good comeback story. Let me tell you a little bit more about mine. I was actually part of one of the worst college football teams of all time, and we had one of the largest, when I say largest college football turnarounds in 1 year. 2016, I played at Fresno State. I was an outside linebacker. I was a starter. We went 1-11 that year. I was one of the worst. We were the worst actually in the FBS that year. We were worst in rushing defense, worst in scoring touchdowns, scoring defense. Everything was just bad. You couldn't have gotten worse than what we produced on that field every week, week in and week out. The fans got to a point where they just stopped coming. It felt like we were at practice. Even practice had a little bit more energy than the games did. And it got to the point where when we play opposing teams, they would have more fans in the stands than our fans. That was a huge point of emphasis of that year. Because we were so bad, our coach got fired mid-season. Literally the middle of the season, we had our intern, one of our wide receivers coaches became the interim head coach. And you would think it'd get better. No, we lost every other game after that. The first game of his interim head coach, we lost 38-0. It was one of the most demoralizing losses I've ever had in my life. Football that year was not fun. But hey, we partied, we had fun. That was actually one of my most funnest years partying. Because at the end of the day, it didn't matter. Some games, I always knew by like the second quarter if we were going to pull this game out. We actually, as well as had one of the largest comebacks. We actually gave up one of the largest leads in Fresno State history. We were up 31-0 and lost, right? At halftime, we were up 31-0 and lost the game. Things like that can only be a nightmare. That year, going into the end of the year, I just remember being like, is this where I want to be? What's going to happen? Fast forward to finding out that we did get a new head coach. I found it actually when I was in one of my classes. It was actually on the Bulldog Sports his Twitter page. And I was like, who is this dude? Ended up finding out that his name is Jeff Teffer. He was a Fresno State quarterback in the early 90s. As well as an OC in the early 2000s. Didn't know anything about him, but I know that he had success in everywhere he's been, especially at Cal when he had Aaron Rodgers, Marshawn Lynch, Deshaun Jackson, a lot of other studs. So I had some optimism, but I had some fear. What is going to happen? I've never been in a situation where a coach got fired. You don't know who he's going to bring in, what he's going to say to the team. But I just remember going into our first meeting with him, and he said one of the most profound things I've ever heard. He said, this is one of the worst programs I've ever seen. From the top to the bottom, from our weight room to our strength program to the way we conducted our travels, the way we played on the games, everything played a part in why our season was so bad. And he says, we're going to have to gut it. First thing he did was fire all the previous coaches in the coaching staff. I was a little bit sad because I was hoping he'd at least keep my position coach, because I really enjoyed him. He was such a good recruiter. He was well liked, and I thought he was one of the better coaches on the staff. I thought he deserved a chance to stay, but Coach didn't care. Coach Teffer brought his own team in, brought in a lot of former Bulldogs, a lot of former players that knew the culture, knew what winning was, and had to bring back that standard that we were missing for so long. First, that offseason was treacherous. I'm not going to lie to you. There was moments and times where I was sitting in the meetings getting berated because my new position coach thought I was bad. He said, you're going to have to work this offseason because there is no starters here. Mind you, I was a 3-year starter coming into that year. This is my senior year. And the coach is telling me that I might not start. I took that as somebody that just did not care for the hierarchy of how things were. As a senior, you've played so long. I've had the experience of being a good player. I just didn't have a good team around me to really show it. So I thought it made it seem like I was a bad player. At that moment, I knew I had to dig. Off season, I put in the most work in the weight room that I've ever had. Coming in on my days off to stretch, get some extra lifts in. So we come in on a Saturday, throw the ball, work on position-specific things so I can make sure that I was at the best for the season. I remember I sat down with the head coach at one of the meetings before the season started. He said, do you want to be here? I looked him dead in the eyes and said, how dare you say that? I've been at every supplemental Saturday. I've worked out harder. I've made all my times that I have had to. I felt like I've been a leader. Of course I want to be here. Not just because I did all that, because these are the brothers that I came with and I want to finish my last year with them. Training camp came in. We're going into the season. We're picked dead last to win, to place, to stand in the standings for the Mountain West. I took that as a personal insult because I didn't think that we were dead last potential. I think we had a lot of good players, but I didn't know how good we could be because we were so bad the year before. My mind was at unrest. I was like, man, can we be good? This is the same team. This is pre-transfer portal, pre-NIL, pre-everything. So we were pretty much taking the same unit, maybe sprinkle a couple of guys from junior college, maybe a transfer here and there, but it wasn't like anything to the magnitude of what college football is now. You can overhaul a whole unit in the transfer portal if you wanted to now. Back then you had what you had going to the next season. So for us, it wasn't looking too good when a lot of our team was from the same year last year. And we didn't have a highly rated recruiting class, so a lot of what ifs were surrounded the football program. But I believed in us. I understood that if it was meant to be, it was up to me, and each one of the seniors on that team was not going to leave there as the worst recruiting class in Fresno history. We understood that if we were going to turn this around, it would have to start with us and the senior leadership, which we took that personally. First game of the year, we played a team from the FCS. We beat them 66-0. I didn't even play the second half because how bad we were beating them. I understood at that moment that, hey, this is going to be a fun season, but we have to lock in. That 66-0 win was just the crescendo, the topping, the rising of what that season was going to be. The season was by no means easy, though. Our next two games were against top four teams that finished in the polls last year, and against Alabama, number one team in the country, and Washington, number four team in the country at the time. We lost those games in a convincing fashion. Not upsetting. Not surprised. Those were two really, really good teams. So in my mind, I was like, hey, we competed. We didn't win, but we weren't going in with the thought of winning. But we still knew that this season was going to change. So at 1-2, going into week 3, going into Mountain West play, we understood that we had to really change who we are because this season really starts now. Those 3 games of the game, those are preseason games in our eyes. We understood that those really don't count towards who makes it to the Mountain West Championship. But our first game against Nevada, this is going to set the tone. Mind you, we already won one game. We've already set the tone. We've already won as many games as we did the year before. So we understood that right now, every win we get now is just literally icing on the cake. We won our first the Mountain West game against Nevada. We beat them. That's already a 50% increase from our year, but year ago we won one game. So the team was happy, but I wasn't content. I just wasn't content. So week in and week out, we went and we played hard. Defense played with we had our heads cut off. Offense was really putting up points. The biggest thing I think that made a difference for us is the way we went into the games. There was such a business-like mentality that we went into. It was a dinner. We didn't say anything. We were focused on the day before the day. There wasn't a lot of hackling and playing around. We didn't bring our Xboxes. We were so locked in on the mission at hand, which was to win the game and make it to the Mountain West Championship. And we haven't been to the Mountain West Championship game in 3 years. So for a lot of us, a lot of the team, they've never seen success. And each game, each win, we did it. We made a change at quarterback. We brought in the transfer QB, and he was a huge impact for our team on the offensive side. And defense, we were just playing lights out, led by our leader, Jeff Allison. Such a baller. We played every weekend. We had a top 15 turnover ratio in the country. We were top in sacks at one point. We were a top team scoring defense in the country. We were top 5 in yards allowed. Everything you could think of was a literally 180 shift from the year before. This team was ready to play. I say all that to say we ended up in the Mountain West Championship game that year, winning, ready. We ended the season beating Houston in the Hawaii Bowl, winning 10 games, which at that point was one of the largest, it was actually number 2 largest college football turnover round of all time. And I could probably say being part of that team was special because it means something when you can set a culture for a program from being at the bottom to see them rise to the top and seeing it all the way through. The next year, the team actually went 12-2, winning the Mountain West Championship, going to being ranked as number 19 in the country. That was special to watch. That's special to see. That's special to understand that we built the bricks, the foundation that led them to that point. So, like I said, we love an underdog story. That was my underdog story. What is yours?